So, ICLEI began in 1990, and then in 1992 was the Earth Summit, and we began to get involved after the Earth Summit in sustainability. And one of the first programs that we initiated was Cities for Climate Protection, that was looking at how do we begin to reduce our greenhouse gases, because we know that the greenhouse gases are changing life on this planet. They're changing it in terms of the Arctic caps are melting. We know that the polar ice sheets are melting, that there are cities like La Paz, Bolivia, that depend upon their water from those ice sheets, and it's going down. So we began this Cities for Climate Protection program, and it reached 800 communities around the world. Probably now it's up to around 1,200 communities around the world. And obviously we've looked at California as being a model for beginning to look at how do you put standards in place that can really drive you towards the best possible practices. And ultimately what it comes down to is energy efficiency. And I know a number of jurisdictions, including my own province, British Columbia, have looked at the California model and said that makes sense to us. This is what we want to do as well.
When it comes to how California is integrating transportation and building development, through AB 32 is really one of the first models of really saying, okay, we have to, as far as future planning goes, transportation has to be sort of very...
Well, I mean, this is now standard planning practice, that the built world and transportation have to be complementary. That you cannot have a sustainable city unless you A, build the best buildings you can, but B, that you integrate the transit systems so that more people are able to go to those services and move around in the most efficient way possible. And we've done that in Vancouver as well. We've looked at it and said, we need to reduce the use of the car and shift over towards a pedestrian, cycling, public transit world. And we've done that. Now in our downtown core, 20% of the trips are by car, 80% are by walking, cycling, and public transit. And that's the changes that really begin to reduce greenhouse gases. The interesting thing as well is they bring more people downtown. And when you bring more people downtown, you have a more lively downtown environment. So all of a sudden, instead of everyone working downtown and then going to the suburbs, you have people working and living downtown, which means that there's a stimulus for business there in terms of restaurants and all the facilities that those people want. And there's a vibrance on the street, which means that it's safer.
What about local control issues with like planning at a local level, where you have these formulas that maybe they don't want to necessarily abide by? I mean, some cities are very interested in this, and other cities are slow to get on board. So how do you...
Well, what we do is we have, and I can't really talk about California's because I don't know. What I can talk about is how it's done where I am, which is that there's a requirement for every municipal jurisdiction to have a community plan and then to integrate that community plan into their region. So that's the way we've done it. And most of our cities are fairly keen to have a sustainable plan. And the question that they ask is, well, if we build a more compact metropolitan community, will it be supported by public transit dollars? Because if you build it and then you still have cars, then you've got a problem. So it's got to be supported by public transit dollars simultaneously. And I think most people, there's a certain resistance initially because you say, well, we live in a car culture. But once people begin to live in it, they understand that this is a better style of life. And I mean, for instance I'll give you is we opened a new transit line for the Olympics. And I was very worried that the transit line wouldn't have the volume. But because of the Olympics, and we said to people, look, don't drive downtown because there won't be parking. And there are a lot of areas that are going to be secured for the Olympic facilities. And so there was a huge uptake of public transit. And I thought, okay, now what'll happen after the Olympics? Well, after the Olympics, people who had tried public transit said, I'm not going back to my car. Why do I want to spend all that money on gas and all that money on parking when I can get a bus or a transit pass and get downtown quicker?
Carbon credits, real quick. California, is implementing this now. There was a number of states, western regional states, that were part of this initial initiative. They've dropped out. I think Quebec is now trading with California.
Yes.
But the rest have not. How do we get the others on board? And is that idea sustainable if you don't have everybody involved?
I think it's very difficult to have a real carbon trading regime as long as you've got very few parties participating. You have to have at least a national trading scheme or a state trading scheme to make that work. We didn't go that way in British Columbia. We put an energy tax in place, the province did, and said basically, we're going to tax the consumption in order to try and reduce the use, and then put the money towards the alternative, which is public transit.
Great. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm from California.
Uh-huh.
Okay.